All right, is everybody ready to get started on our program that will take us up to lunch? All right. Okay. Welcome, everybody. This is a presentation and more we want it to be a discussion about use of mock juries, focus groups, and the like. And I think it comes off the last presentation we had with the excess topic, because I don't think that there's any cases that are probably reaching excess that have not engaged in the type of activities that we're going to be talking about. So let me start by saying this. Anybody in the room that has not yet been involved in some kind of an activity evaluating your case, mock juries or focus groups or other types of evaluations? Anybody not done that yet? Okay, so everybody in this room has probably done some of these activities. My name is Melinda Matlock. Let me introduce my panel. And I am from the Oklahoma representative for Themis, and I'm a practicing lawyer. And I have Wendy Harris from VGM Insurance Services, and I know she has done some mock jury, mock type of activities, because I know we've done at least one together. And then we have Elizabeth Foreman, and she is from Magna, and she's a PhD. So what I've learned over the years, is doing the mock jury and focus group type activities, research activities. It's not just something you kind of figure out, hey, this is interesting, I think I'm going to do it. Magna has a list of PhDs who really put a lot of science into the situation, and she's going to talk about that a little bit. And then my co-presenter, Kent Gummert, he's from the Iowa representative of Themis Attorneys. And so hopefully we can get some dialogue going, because everybody in this room has maybe done some of this. So please raise your hand, feel free to jump in. Even though we'll have a discussion up here, we want to involve you guys in the discussion as much as possible. So this topic really came about in our discussion and planning for the meeting this year as an idea, because I was thinking back that 10 years ago, 15, I think I did the first mock jury exercise that I was ever involved in was about 15, maybe even 20 years ago. And since then, it's becoming more and more prevalent. And I was talking with another one of the Magna folks who said that when she joined the company years ago, there were only about 3 or 4 consultants, and now they have grown exponentially and have, how many consultants?
30 jury consultants.
Have 30 jury consultants now, full time. So this area is growing, and to take off of the excess discussion, it's growing because verdicts are going up, evaluations are going up, there's a lot more money at risk, and how that money can be saved or allocated is becoming more and more important, and it's a science. So let me hand this off a little bit and let Elizabeth talk about some of the science on this, the research side, and how it's so helpful and important, and how it's developed.
Thank you. Yeah, sounds on. If you will advance the next slide. So, as she said, I am with Magna Legal Services. We do all kinds of stuff, a full litigation team. What I do, my background is in psychology. Not that kind of psychologist, and I'm not analyzing you. I don't have a couch in my office, and I can't help you with your problems, but I can research your problems. So my background, I am an experimental psychologist, and I work as a jury consultant with Magna. So what do we do? This looks like a salesy slide. This is what the way that Magna describes jury research. And one of the questions that I was asked, or one of the topics before coming into this panel, was why is jury research increasing? Why do we hear more and more people are doing jury research? Some of you may call that a mock trial. Some of you may call it a focus group. I call it jury research because those terms really get into what I call research design. So one of the reasons why you're seeing more jury research is because our design options and the way that we're going about researching cases has evolved and changed over time. How many of you are familiar with the standard opening adversarial mock trial? You go in and do a 70-minute presentation of your opening. You also mix in some evidence. Then the opposition gets up and they do theirs. Then we send the jury out and they deliberate to a full verdict. That takes typically all day. It takes a lot of people, and it takes a lot of time and resources. I see people and they're like, okay, we're gonna do jury research, and their eyes get really wide. They're like, that sounds like a huge commitment of time and energy. Sometimes it's the carrier reaching out and telling their counsel, hey, guess what? We're volunteering you to do a focus group for this. So just one of the things that I want to talk about briefly is that it doesn't have to be that standard full day mock trial adversarial way. People are more familiar with jury research. There's a television show, Bull. It's getting part of the collective consciousness. And so because of that, social psychologists have really gotten involved over the last 20 years, and we've really brought research design into it. And not only do we do the full-blown mock trials in person, we also do more exploratory type focus groups, right? And the thing that I try to do when I get a call, let's say I get a call from our sales team and they say, hey, we got a client that we need you to hop on an intake call, they want a mock trial. I say, perhaps. Because some people don't really know what they want, and it depends on where you are in discovery. It depends on your particular case, what resources you have to devote to this. How is this a clear-cut liability case? Do you feel like, or are the damages pretty much, you know that this is a catastrophic injury and you're just looking at liability? You don't want to, you know that if the jury goes with the plaintiff, you're going to get a high verdict. So you really just want to focus in on what does our liability look like. We know the damages are going to be high. So you can break down your focus group, focus on just liability, focus on just causation, focus on just damages. One other thing I want to mention in terms of format is, so we have in-person research, we have online research. A lot of people are scared of that. It is a much cheaper way of doing your presentation than an in-person. No, you don't have to get on a plane. And you can often get more participants in the online format. So that is it's just been a real game changer, especially during the pandemic. Obviously, we all went online. But another thing that we're doing now is we've gotten so many calls over the years that are just like, what is my case worth, right? And that's all we want to know. So we have this tool that we're doing, and a lot of companies and a lot of researchers are doing it. We call it Jury Evaluator, but basically it's we write a script, we put a story together about both sides of the case. We send that out to 100 people in your venue, in your community, and we get them to give us their feedback and ultimately give us their number for damages. Then we take that and we put it into our statistical model, and we run those 100 people an infinite number of ways. We say, and we statistically tell you what your high is and what your low is. So I don't want to take too much time, but I guess what I'm here to do is to talk about the different ways that you can go about researching your case, and that it doesn't always have to be this cookie cutter, full-blown, very, very expensive process.
Could you comment a little bit about, you get a call, like you said, you get a call from saying, hey, let's jump on, we have somebody who's interested. How important is the timing of when you select to do one of your research things? If you're doing I know I got involved in a case where we did a mock jury trial, and all the evidence was in, but then we had a big piece of new evidence come in on the liability side that basically destroyed the value of what we had done. So in terms of the timing of when you were to do a mock jury or focus group, or what timing things are important?
Timing is everything. Aside from budget, timing is the most important. It matters how far into discovery you are. I had a call the other day. Someone wanted to put on a very quick focus group. There was a contributory negligence, a guy standing at a stoplight, tractor trailer at a red light as well, makes a left turn, hits the guy. So they say very quickly, we have video of it. We just want to know what a jury thinks about this guy standing here. However, this plaintiff has a history of mental illness, some psychiatric diagnoses, and we really want to know how that's going to play with sympathy. And is the jury just going to say this guy's catastrophically injured, feel sympathy for him, and look past the contributory negligence aspects? And so I say, well, what do you know about the plaintiff? They say, absolutely nothing. We haven't talked to him. We haven't heard from him. We haven't sent any discovery. We don't know anything about him. So my first response is, well, so the jury's going to want to know that in order to test what the jury thinks about this plaintiff, and we have to know who this plaintiff is. So in that case, I said, look, we have plenty of time. We are not ready. You need to go back out. I need you to take a deposition, video it so that I have that information, and we'll play it in the focus group. So if all of your discovery is complete, you're running into trial, that's also going to be a key factor. On our end, we can do a mock trial, we can do a focus group in 2 to 3 weeks. That's nothing. We've had, hey, we need this next week, we can pull that off. What does that mean to you though? Are you gonna have enough time to A, put your case together, present it, get the results back from us, crunch that, and somehow use that to reformat your opening, work on your case strategy? So you want to leave enough time. But the last thing I'll say about your situation, if you are in a situation where you're running into the research and you have motions on the table, you don't know, this judge is not going to rule, you don't know what's coming in, you don't know what's not coming in, my advice for clients and for all of you, put your worst day on in court. Imagine that you're going to lose every motion, everything that you don't want to come in will come in, and test that. Then if you get thrown a curveball that's better for you, at least you know your worst case scenario. Does that kind of help?
Yeah, it did. So, Wendy, I want you to jump in here a little bit. You're with a carrier, and so you're the one that's making the decisions or approving the decisions and suggestions to whether to engage in this type of research. What's been your experience, and how do you like to approach when to do this and how to do it and justifying the expense?
I like to do it as early as possible. Sometimes you propose, let's mock this case, and defense counsel's like, well, we haven't deposed everybody and we don't have every expert opinion. I don't get too hung up on that because we can assume, like Elizabeth said, what's the worst that this expert could say? What's the worst this witness could say? We can come up with those assumptions and then get the case to a focus group early, and that helps us posture it. And every time I have done a full-blown mock or the jury evaluator, the case hasn't gone to trial. So I always tell adjusters that I work with, who say, well, why would we want to do a mock or a focus group? Because the vast majority of our claims settle prior to trial. It's like, well, that's exactly why we want to do it, because every time we've done it, and the one that Melinda and I did together, it helped us get that case settled and for much less than a jury would have awarded if they'd gotten a hold of it.
And the case that she's talking about, we had a case in which it was a pharmacy situation where pharmacies now sometimes give injections. And so we had a pharmacy in Oklahoma that the pharmacist had gone to a residential center and was giving out flu shots. And there were 8 disabled people that were residents in this center. And when he went back to the refrigerator to get the flu shots, he actually grabbed someone's insulin, and he gave these 8 residents insulin instead of flu shot. And so exactly. So we had a lot of questions about what the jury was going to think. We had, in terms of how are they going to be perceived? Here they're disabled people, so they're very helpless, but they had nurses around that were realizing what happened and how quickly they realized. On top of that, the pharmacist that went out from the pharmacy to do it tried to cover it up because he left when he saw that everybody was reacting, and he freaked out, goes back to, and on his way back to the pharmacy, he gets his vials of flu shot and dumps some out so it looks like that he had used flu shot instead of. So we had a lot of questions about the value of that case, 8 people, and we mocked it, and or we actually jury evaluated it is what we did. And we were able to settle that case for a lot less than what we thought, and able to convince somehow through the mediation process, convince the plaintiff's attorney also to take a lot less money. But that one saved a lot of money off your reserve.
It did, and the tricky thing about that case is Melinda and I agonized, is like the damages weren't that significant. The damages really because these people went to the emergency room, their blood sugars were stabilized, they spent the night in the hospital and were discharged the next day. No permanent damages, other than some psychological, some of these people who were mentally disabled then had a lot of fear of ever getting another shot again, those kind of things. But the liability was what was killing us. It was like, how much would this offend a jury? We found out it would offend them a lot. And our jury evaluator, those 100 people really couldn't give these people enough money. And the case was very complicated also because the pharmacist and the pharmacy were both insured under the same policy, but obviously there was a conflict. And so we had to separate the claim in-house, and I think we took the pharmacist, right? And then someone else had the pharmacy.
No, other way around.
Or other way around.
The pharmacist also had another policy and another carrier.
Yes. And so we were fighting that as well, because the pharmacy was trying to distance themselves as much as possible. This guy went out on his own and did this. We didn't tell him to do it. We didn't tell him to dump it out in the parking lot, So there was all of that going on. And so we were trying to find out, liability-wise, how much liability would be put on the pharmacy versus the pharmacist, and then how much, so we would know which case, where the reserves should go, and where the loss should be paid, and then also, of course, how much it was worth globally. And I joked to Melinda after we got that case settled, because the plaintiff attorney in that case was very unlikable, we'll say, very difficult, and had made our lives miserable. And I said, can we just put this like in a brown paper envelope and send it to him so he can see what he walked away from? She did not let me do that, but it was a bad case, and the jury evaluator was immensely helpful.
Yeah.
How often are you guys, showing some cards in a settlement process? We took this to a mock jury. They don't care about that issue, or this is what they're valuing it. How often have you been doing that, or do you keep it to your chest more? How often are you using it in the settlement process?
You want to comment?
Thanks. Well, I don't know if I've ever gone 20 minutes and not said a word, so we owe you one.
Your time to shine. Your time to shine.
I was going through withdrawals. It depends on the plaintiff's attorney. It depends on the case. I had one against notorious California firm. Well, they're an Iowa firm. And it was the pretrial during a coffee break. The one California attorney I actually had a relationship with disclosed to me finally, 4 days before trial, hey, we've done a jury evaluator. He didn't call it a mock. I think they just mailed stuff out. And they came, and it's coming in at 14 million. Well, I didn't tell them. Our numbers were 10 to 12 million. So we got it settled the next day. But it took until 4 days before trial before I had an honest conversation. So it depends on the plaintiff's attorney, it depends on the case, and it depends on your relationship with them.
Definitely, because I know we're hearing, or at least I'm hearing, when plaintiffs' attorneys, they're mocking, and I think a lot of what I understand, at least they're doing in my state, they're doing more focus grouping. And it's very, unscientific.
And that's why I asked, because I go to mediation. We had 4 focus groups on this, and they said
Exactly.
this and this, and we don't do it as much on the defense side. And I just was wondering if you guys were having some success saying, well, we had a focus group too.
I've seen this go both ways. So I've had clients walk into the mediation and take our, with appendix and everything, our 100-page report, drop it on the table and say, let's go. And what I find, what I'm hearing in response to that is there's well, great. yeah, you focus group this case, you went in there, you told them what it's about, but I wasn't in there. There tends to be an ego response to it, and it's, I don't care what you did, what your, ridiculous science said. I haven't gotten in the courtroom and played ball yet. But what I find is helpful is, number one, it changes your attitude walking into the mediation. You're gonna have a different look in your eye, you're gonna have you be slightly more confident. Tell them, look, what I find has been more helpful for our clients is when they walk into a mediation or they're on the phone with co-counsel or opposition counsel and they say, look, we've researched this. We know what a jury's gonna say. We're confident in our number. And that, I feel like, is what really sends the message, like, ooh. But if you tell them, hey, we went in a focus group and we got a 0 verdict, that's really, they're gonna tend to reject that rather than just looking at your air of confidence. Also, I say don't give them our report. Don't give them a roadmap on how to fix their case. Just tell them it exists.
Yeah. More often too, I'm finding that at mediation, sometimes I'm reluctant to even tell the mediator specifically that we've done the exercise, but sometimes I tell them, hey, we've done the exercise, I'm not going to give you everything because I don't want you, but if I trust the mediator and I've worked with them, sometimes they'll use that information in a credible way to send a message of some sort. So, in the back?
Yeah, I'm curious what kind of experience you've had in terms of verdict outcomes compared to the verdict research you've done, jury research. So actual verdicts compared to jury research you did before the trial.
Classic question. How accurate is your research? So, as a social scientist, I will say that this isn't empirical data. We can't replicate this research. So, our verdicts are on trend with what happens our focus group results, they tend to key up, they tend to be in line with what happens in court. What you can't do, though, is look at what you say in a research project, in a focus group, a mock trial, and then look at what happens in court and try to compare the two. It's really apples and oranges, because what's happened after you watch those deliberations. Maybe it goes well for you, maybe you have a total existential crisis about your case, but then you come back to the table and you rework it. Maybe you take another deposition, you nail down some of those ridiculous rabbit holes that the focus group jurors went into, and then you're looking at a different case by the time this actually goes to trial. What I will say, and this is what we tell all of our clients, it is less about that number that you get in the research. Do not focus on it. Sometimes we're telling our clients, don't even give it to your carrier. Unless you have to. It's the emotion translates. What people think if they are upset at at a particular witness, if they don't trust your expert, you can rely on that coming through in trial. Whether the degree to which that's going to be polarized is going to depend on how much you prep your case in between. But very frequently, we get calls, we see outcomes from trials, from cases that is very much on brand with the range from our research, but definitely absolutely on brand with the comments and the perception of the parties and the fact pattern.
Actually, I have a follow-up for Wendy. As opposed to the mock verdicts, similar to the real verdicts, you have defense counsel give a case evaluation, and then you mock trial it. How often are they in line, the results and data from the mock trial versus what your defense counsel's evaluation was?
In my experience, they've been pretty close. Now, in the case that Melinda and I did, neither one of us could really think of what the value of that might be until we did the evaluator, because it was just such a difficult case. Circling back really quickly to the question about sharing the report, where I've had the most success is sharing that report with co-defendants, right? So when you have a co-defendant in a case who's being really obstinate about liability or about what a case is worth, and you're trying to figure out apportionment before you go to mediation, things like that. I have found that doing the jury evaluator and having that information is really good leverage to get them to come to the table and pay what they need to pay and evaluate the case the way it should be. And sometimes I hold that report hostage because I've paid for it, and I'll say, listen, I'm going to share this with you, but you're going to reimburse half of my expense. And they'll do it because they want it so badly.
Does it also help you going up the tower with excess carriers?
Yes. Same thing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Are you inviting co-defendants to participate in the mock with you at the onset?
No.
No.
You do.
Yeah. Is there anybody else who's, whether they've had co-defendants and they either do a joint exercise, or do you keep your exercise separate and use it maybe for leverage? Joe?
When we have co-defendants, we make sure that someone plays them in the mock trial or focus group. Either from my firm, And just to Elizabeth's point also about the egotistical plaintiff's lawyer, it's absolutely crucial. Whoever plays the plaintiff better do a good job. And that's something, I've done it with people in my firm, and they haven't spoken to me for a couple of weeks. Seriously, you have to know that plaintiff's going to be him or her and put that case in the way they would. You can't, no pulling of punches, no egos. I'm not trying to be pedantic or talk down. It has to be that way. Whoever plays the plaintiff better be that plaintiff.
And Joe's really good at it.
What's that?
I said, and Joe's really good at it.
I'm not going to tell horror stories, but yeah, you just have to do it. And, Emily and I just had one with the plaintiff's lawyer said, I'll give you a continuance to do a mock trial, but you have to play me. And so I did, so that's what you do.
Well, and to your point, Joe, I want to plug Steve Grubbs, who's not here, but earlier, but in March of last year, 2024, we had a big transportation case. And we called upon Steve Grubbs, who's one of our Themis brothers, and he played the plaintiff's lawyer. He played a notorious East Texas transportation lawyer. He did it very, very well. And that was one of the great things in terms of being a member of this organization, is being able to call upon those of us who we know are good at what they do and can jump in and do that. And Steve, he wasn't involved in the underlying case. He set aside time, he studied, and showed up at this neutral venue in Arkansas with us, and did a wonderful job, and we appreciated that, and we loved having the resources. So something about this organization that's another benefit that the benefits just keep creating themselves, and they're wonderful. So
one point, in general, I think the value of lots of information, above anything else, that many cases are driven by optics or reptile areas who all know it. And we can identify values on injuries pretty well. What we really need to understand is how a jury's going to perceive what may be bad optics in a case and what value is going to attach to that. I think we found, with regard to co-defendants, we found good value in that, particularly when you have a co-defendant that may be defended by, say, it's a product case and their counsel is in Ohio, but the case is in Texas, right? And they've been telling their client all along, in this case, there's nothing wrong with their product, it's perfect, right? Maybe because they're very defensive about their product naturally, and they're giving them painting kind of a rosy picture, and then you can give them information saying, it's not as rosy as you think. You've been led down the primrose path, and here's really a better understanding of what the values in this case may represent and what the granting issues are that may be at stake, for your client too, who's the co-defendant in the case. So there is some value to that, and we would agree with that.
yeah. Ted?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one point, this whole thing, you don't know how a judge is going to rule. What do you do? What we've done with Mag, and we use you all the time, is, the script is written in jury evaluator. And then we then ask a follow-up question. Assume if you knew this, or if this wasn't in the case, so you are able to, you have to put the worst case in, no doubt, but you are able to tease out issues. If you didn't know, if there was no life care plan, and you didn't know what the future medical, what would your number be? How would that change? So there's ways to do it, and I'm picking a jury Monday. I don't know what my motions are going to be decided Monday afternoon. And they're all big, but we're, and by the way, I'm waiting for the result. Would you call your office and get them?
Absolutely. We did one where we had some questions like that prepared. It was an online exercise, And I'll jump forward. I did a few slides just to quickly demonstrate. Let's see, I'll get to yours. We had a case where, and I use this, these slides come from, the plaintiff submitted this before mediation. Their mediation statement was a slide presentation. I used the majority of their slide presentation in our online mock jury or research exercise. So this is a security case. This is how he came out of a grocery store that I was representing. So they start out, they showed the...
That's plaintiffs?
That's the plaintiff. That's his pictures.
Plaintiff chose to show those pictures?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Well, he went into the grocery store and that's how he came out. But anyway, and then one of the things we did too that we've learned is kind of trying to get information, to Elizabeth's point of having information you can do. In depositions now, we're videoing almost all the depositions in cases, and we ask a question that's just, hey, tell us what happened in your own words. And so we have this narrative. So now we can use this narrative in these exercises where the plaintiff is really telling everything, as opposed to having multiple questions and answers. I mean, we do pin them down in deposition with focused questions, but we're kind of giving them a big softball question because we're going to use that softball in our exercise. This one they used a police officer, showed that he was on their side. It was kind of a way, and we wanted the jury to know that the police officer was going to come up and actually be behind this guy and support him. But kind of back to, we put some questions out there for the jurors, the mock jurors, or to give us some information, and we asked them different questions about that. Our case was big about vicarious liability. We had a private security group, third-party security group. But we also came up with other questions that we didn't know what were going to happen based on either motions in limine, what if you knew X, Y, Z, something we're trying to keep out, and then get their response on that. And we've gotten some really valuable information, or we feel like it's valuable because we've been identifying things that we think are maybe pressure points, and sometimes we learned that the jurors didn't care too much about some of the things that we thought were significant. So that kind of information is also very valuable. So, Kent, you want to get back to a little bit? You had some things you wanted to demonstrate.
Yeah, we had a mock trial in August with Magna, and I found out this morning Elizabeth worked on that file when she saw the case name. I got involved 90 days before trial. The mediation was already set, the mock trial was already set, and I was given the task of evaluating it and then playing the plaintiff in the mock trial. It was, if you want to go to the next slide, it involves, I don't know if anyone's been to the Midwest, but we have LP gas tanks out on farms. Big white tanks sitting in the yard. This was the first time I've ever seen one where it's buried in the ground. So if you look at that picture, can you go back one?
Go back.
Sorry. The green, nope.
Sorry.
The green cover there are gas standpipes that go down into the ground, into the LP gas tank, and we believe it was there about 40 years. The plaintiff had owned this property for 6 months before the accident. If you want to go to the next. That's the gas tank that was buried under the ground. And then the plaintiff was operating a skid loader to remove trees that had been taken down in the dark on his own property. He backed up and backed over that cover, broke off the standpipes, and the LP gas went into the engine of the skid loader, and he was trapped. This was from a neighbor who stopped to take a picture as he was running over to help him. We're not sure if the plaintiff was in the skid loader at this point or not. We don't know how he got out. He had over $6 million in paid medical expenses from the burn unit. He lived, which greatly increased the value of the case. So there were a number of issues, if we'll go one more slide, that was taken 2 days later because they let the rest of the gas just burn the rest of the time. So the carrier had already decided to mock try it. We had a couple of evidentiary issues. We didn't know if we would come in. There was THC in the plaintiff's system, and the family continued to use our gas company for 2 years after this accident. And being the experienced trial lawyer I am, I'm like, oh, THC, holy smokes, they're gonna zip this guy on comparative fault if it comes in. And we had a toxicologist, may come in, may not. And then no one cares to continue to use us. It's a rural Iowa. There's only 2 suppliers in the county. The value, you learn what you don't know from these mock trials. We had 3 panels of 12, and it was online. And so one panel was not told either piece of evidence, one panel was told about the THC, and one panel was told to continue to use us. The panel with the THC didn't give, you know what? We had several jurors talk about, well, I'm more alert when I have THC. You know, I'm more attentive. And I'm sitting there shaking my head. None of them, and I think we did end up disclosing the THC to another panel, they didn't care either. The fact they continued to use us for 2 years after they blamed us for this accident, they couldn't get past that. One of them said, well, case over. How can you sue somebody and continue to use them? I had it exactly the opposite in my mind. I thought THC would bother jurors. I think the lesson is they don't care anymore. And the fact they used us was very important. So I guess one of the questions about the effectiveness of the results, 30 days in, I did an evaluation for the carrier. Here's our chance of a defense verdict. Here's our chance, comparative fault, and then, a big verdict. The results were almost identical, percentage-wise. And so I joked with my claims person, well, why'd you pay Magda all that money? You could have just listened to me. But her response was very telling. It gives us data points. My management, before we spend $10 million, wants data points, and the tower, the people above us want them. So, and it got settled. So it was money well spent, and it got the case settled. And it taught us a lot about our own case.
Question on that point. Yeah. Are we too shocked that people who happen to be free on a Tuesday morning for $50 care about THC or don't care about THC? I mean, demography and jury selection is kind of a question I have for the vendor, because how do we control demography and represent all strata of the population?
That's a great question, and it's in on my list here for Elizabeth. One, how do you find jurors? Two, this case, the plaintiff owned a business in the community, and everyone knows it. He services my lawnmower. I bought a snowblower from the guy. My client was one of the few LP gas suppliers in the county. Everyone knows them. So I was very concerned about them calling the plaintiff after the mock trial, saying, hey, we just told the defense attorney it's a $20 million case. So I was worried about that. And then it came up during our discussions, surrogate venues for mock trials, if you could address that.
Yeah. So is this on? Okay. Yep. We get the question all the time, are participants of jury research different from jurors? The answer is yes. There's everything about jury research is somewhat artificial, just like all laboratory science as well, right? Short of bringing someone into a courtroom and bringing in live witnesses for a true blue mock trial, we have to do it on a Tuesday from 8 to 5, and we need 36 people to be available. Who are those people? Who is crazy enough to volunteer to go and spend their day? Are these people different? Some of them are. So we do control for demographics. We have a set number of education, employed, unemployed. You're also dealing with people who are lying, right? We say, have you ever participated in a research project in the last 4 years? And they're like, no, never. I'm like, Todd, I saw you 2 months ago. But, and I'll get into surrogate venues in a moment. So there is some difference, but you're never gonna get an anesthesiologist to show up for a mock trial on a Tuesday, right? You have to drag people into court. You have to force them to serve on a jury. But you do get the same attitudes. You will get people who are educated. You will get retirees. You will get people who are no longer working, engineers. We do get a range of those people. So as long as you have enough, I call them thinkers and non-thinkers, right? As long as you have enough people that are high in need for cognition, that are going to think about your case, they're still going to contribute in that focus group, and you can still extrapolate and extend the people with the higher education they do show up for the focus groups. You have to take it with a grain of salt, right? You have to keep in mind that you don't have the actual opposition counsel in there most of the time. So you're putting on, and just to the point that came across earlier in the audience, it is absolutely, if you do anything in research, plan the opposition's side first. Make it sing, make it their absolute best day. If you're gonna last minute anything, work on slides the morning of, make it your case. I know that seems counterintuitive. Okay, we're getting a sign here. Surrogate venues. We do a lot of work and research on finding proper surrogate venues. Unless you have, I would say, a recruiter or someone who's looking for a surrogate venue, I think it would be a little difficult to do just as an attorney trying to put on their own jury research. But we do it a lot. We do surrogate venues, and we try to match it as closely as possible to the demographic, but always keeping in mind that there is a sense of artificiality to this research. It's not a one-to-one comparison. But have I seen that change or skew the results? No, I say that from doing post-trial interviews with actual jurors, it is, and with our shadow jurors who are sitting in the audience, it keys up very similarly to what we're seeing in our jury research.
One of the other things that we've done too is we make sure we have the jury verdict form for that venue and work back from that, because it's very different from state to state. Texas has a bunch of damage lines, but one of the important things we realize too is if our driver and our company are both defendants, we better make sure that both defendants at the mock, because the thing that constantly surprises me, you think I get over it, is they'll give our driver a pass and kill the company, but there's almost no, we didn't even produce evidence of the company. And yet, jurors still find a way to blame companies for the driver's conduct. And you're just like, wow, I didn't anticipate this, at all. And it happens all the time. So, and we definitely share our outcomes at mediation. We never give them the report, but we tell them we did it. So one of the things we tell them is, it tells them we're invested in the defense. It tells them we're prepared to try. And if you force us to try with this, we are going to be prepared. And we absolutely have our lead defense counsel often be plaintiffs, just because it gives them a different perspective and they get to understand things cases better, and it helps them to defend. And the last thing we do is we insist that everything we videotape deposition-wise, plaintiff, key witnesses, even our driver. We've got to push back on that. We don't want to create video of our driver. But we're going to mock a lot of these, especially when we have video of the accident, because it's so illustrative. But we want to know what the jury thinks of our driver, because that is often dictates how defensible it is and whether we can.
And along those lines, because now we're videoing more, now I find that there's nothing, kind of sarcastically, but almost true, is that there's no such thing as just a discovery deposition anymore. You're videoing, but even in the, traditionally, I wouldn't ask my client questions at a discovery deposition. Well, now my view is there is no such thing as a discovery deposition. These are depositions that are planning to be used, and if we're wanting to use it in a mock, I need to maybe ask some questions that are going to fairly represent something that we want to say, because I want during the research phase, I want them to be able to see what my guy says and how he says it, so I can get a real test of that as well. So these types of things have changed kind of how we approach the way we did things 15, 20 years ago. We're doing them much different now, and much differently, and for different reasons that didn't even exist then. And so I think it'll be interesting to see what the next 5 to 10 years does in terms of changing or impacting how we are doing our litigation phase, but also getting ready for research phase, and then eventually even in trial. So, well, we're 2 minutes before noon. I don't know if anybody else has anything they want to offer, and any more questions?
I just want Wendy and Elizabeth's input on timeframes. Half-day mediation, full day, because the one we did was online. I was given 45 minutes to put on the plaintiff's case, where I had 14 experts and video clips of the plaintiff, video clips of the driver, I went an hour and a half. And the defense attorney went an hour and 15 minutes. And Magna was scrambling then to get the 3 panels separated and give them adequate time to deliberate. And we still got an hour and 20 minutes of deliberation. So we got our bang for the buck. But in hindsight, maybe we should have went a day. So what's been your guys' experience on the length of the mock trial?
When I have done live mocks, we've done 1 full day. It's an exhausting day, but the thing that I really like about the jury evaluator tool is you don't have to worry about any of that because it's all in writing and it's a recorded presentation, and so you can cut through the logistics, and as long as the written presentation, and then it's like videotaped, right? There's like someone who looks like a broadcaster who reads the story, and so the timing, you don't have to worry about the timing.
And I can answer this question very quickly. So when people tell me that they want to know about damages, that's going to automatically translate into a full day for me. I would suggest, or kind of my quick and dirty analysis on length of time is, if you want to test one issue, if you want to look at liability, you can do that in a half day. If you want to look at just causation, you can do that in a half day. But jurors, in order to decide damages, they have to know everything about your case. They have to know the liability, your causation, and they have to know about the plaintiff. They have to hear about what they've been through in order to give you a somewhat accurate number. So I'm always, and I'm constantly seeing clients struggle to get all of that information out. And then sometimes the carrier wants to say, you know what, we really want to test liability, but let's throw damages on. Let's just ask the question. But to ask that question, it's really unfair to throw an entire liability case at a jury, give a tiny 10-minute explanation of damages, and then ask them to award. So if you really want information about more than one thing, liability and damages, or if you're going to look at damages in general, I say give it the time and space that it needs.
Real quick, how do you find like the 100 people to do the jury evaluation? You email that out randomly? What do you do to find those people?
So we do it the same way that we recruit for jury research. We use third-party recruiting platforms all over the country, and so they go into the venue, they reach out, they advertise on social media, newspapers, they find the people the same way that they do to come into our in-person research. So amazing recruiters we give them our vetting process, right? We have our list of criteria that specifically for this case and aspects of your case that we want to make sure that no one has any particular interest. If it's a med mal case, we don't want any doctors or nurses. It's recruiters.
We've got the hook.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much.